Good afternoon, thank you, and thank you to Professor Peng for the invitation to participate in the forum this weekend. Families represent the primary social unit in which people spend their lives. For most people, families are present from birth to death and are the source of many of life's joys and occasionally some of life's sorrows. The story of each family unfolds over a lifetime with a complex cast of characters, each with their own individual story that intersects with the evolution of the entire family's story. All of that takes place within a particular cultural context, within a particular national context, and a particular point in history, all of which exert an influence on family relationships and family dynamics. By the time people reach later life, their story, and the story of their family, is a complex narrative that guides how older adults and their family members work together to ensure quality of life for older adults. I'm going to begin by talking about several key population trends that affect families. Although families have been involved in supporting older adults for generations, over the last 100 years, several demographic and social trends have influenced and will continue to influence the structure of families and how they collaborate with older adults. The first key demographic trend is the extension of life expectancy. In 1840, the highest reported life expectancy in developed nations was 46, rising to 60 by 1900 and again to 83 by the year 2000. Rising life expectancy has resulted in the increase in the sheer number of older adults and an increase in the proportion of people at older ages in the population. In fact, the oldest old, that is people over age 85, are the fastest growing segment of the population, expected to increase 351% between 2010 and 2050. This change may be accelerated in the near future in some Asian and developing countries, with the notable exception of sub-Saharan Africa, where civil wars, famines, and epidemics may keep the population relatively young. The consequence for families is that as more people survive into later life, and they live much longer than they have in the past, more generations will be alive at the same time. What this means is that relationships with children may span more than 60 years, relationships with spouses and partners more than 70 years, and relationships with siblings over 80 years. Families are just now beginning to experience that change in navigating the challenges in maintaining healthy, mutual relationships over such an extended period of time. The second key demographic trend is decreasing fertility rates. The global fertility rate in 1970 was 4.7, but it dropped to 2.5 by 2013. This trend has resulted in families that are smaller in average size, particularly in the industrialized world, where the shape of the typical family looked more like a pyramid in the past, with more people in younger generations and fewer people in older generations. Contemporary families look more like a beanpole, with more balanced numbers across generations. What sociologists refer to as the verticalization of families may translate into fewer people in younger generations being available to support the older generation. The responsibility of caring for older adults, therefore, falls to a fewer number of people within a family, escalating the obligations for any one individual. A third and related demographic trend is an increasing delay in when people choose to form their family. As one index of this trend, between 1970 and 2008, the age at which people married rose for 100 of the 114 countries analyzed by the United Nations. In addition, the age at which women have their first child has also risen. In the United States, the proportion of women having their first child between the age of 35 and 39 rose from 2.1% in 1970 to 11% in 2011. And the average age of first-time mothers rose from 21 years old in 1970 to 25 years old in 2006. Consequently, the number of years between generations is becoming higher, and there is the potential that people in more widely staggered generations will have very different life experiences and very different values. Bridging those intergenerational differences represents a source of potential conflict. For example, although norms regarding family responsibilities for caregiving remain strong, there is some indication that beliefs about filial obligations have weakened since the 1970s in both more individualistic Western societies and more collectivist Eastern societies. Moreover, families in each generation are coping with the different set of lifespan developmental milestones when they are supporting older adults. In the past, when adult children were called upon to care for aging parents, their own children were likely to be fairly grown and independent. But in more contemporary families, adult children may be caring for older parents at the same time that they have extensive responsibilities for caring for young children. Therefore, caring for older parents may come with more practical and financial implications for adult children. A fourth trend is reflected in shifts in the causes of morbidity and mortality. The most common causes of death several decades ago were acute illnesses that took people relatively earlier in their life and relatively quickly, such as influenza, tuberculosis, and infections. In contrast, the most common causes of death now are quite different and reflect progressive disease that older adults cope with for years before dying, such as heart disease, cancer, chronic pulmonary disease, and cerebrovascular disease. In addition, because people live longer, they have more opportunity to develop chronic conditions that degrade capabilities in activities of daily living and overall quality of life. Severe diabetes can lead to blindness or amputations, arthritis can limit mobility, depression can contribute to social isolation. In addition, the incidence of dementias such as Alzheimer's disease is increasing, and these conditions bring a long phase of disability. For families, this means that older adults have different needs for support and care than they have in the past, and they will have those needs for longer. These are statistics that show percentage change in selected causes of death between the years of 2000 and 2013, all of which have decreased with the exception of Alzheimer's disease. A fifth and final trend is that the structure and typical membership of families is changing rapidly. Heterosexual couples with children, while still the most common family arrangement, have been supplemented by a wide range of other family constellations. Divorce rates are high in some countries, and the proportion of men and women forming multiple unions over their lifetime is increasing, particularly in developed countries. This means that increasingly, caregiving for older adults falls to step relations, where the timing of divorce and remarriage and residue from conflicts within the family can complicate caregiving. Other family structures that are becoming more common include single-parent households, grandparents as primary parents, gay and lesbian unions, childless households, and informal families made up of fictive kin based on affiliation and choice. In the years ahead, caregiving for older adults will be influenced less by blood and more by other forms of relational ties. And in all of these families' constellations, the norms and expectations are complex and still very fluid. In summary, currently and in the years ahead, the world will be populated by more older people who are living longer with different and more intense needs than in the past, and they are living in smaller families with widely spaced generations, all of whom have had very different experiences in their lives. The result is that caregiving for older adults is more universal and more complicated than it has ever been before in human history. And at the cusp of this change, attitudes, behaviors, and pragmatics continue to evolve. Caring for older adults takes many forms, and it's supported by many different institutions. Families are involved in caring for older adults by providing direct care, by planning, coordinating, and supervising care that's provided by others, and by making decisions about care. In terms of direct care, families provide a great deal of care themselves. Some of that care is functional, providing assistance with shopping, errands, housekeeping, personal grooming, and transportation. Some of that care is financial, helping older adults not only manage their finances, but also meet their financial obligations by transferring wealth to them. And some of that care is emotional. Caregivers listen, empathize, and problem solve with older adults. Less direct, but equally essential, family members also plan, coordinate, and supervise care that is provided by people outside of the family. When an older adult first needs support that will not be provided by the family is often responsible for locating someone who can provide that service, comparing costs, vetting their competence and trustworthiness, and scheduling the service. Family members determine whether an older adult is eligible for governmental entitlements, and they direct the often complicated process of applying for and managing benefits. In terms of medical care, family members secure referrals, schedule appointments, arrange and provide transportation, offer input to providers, translate health information, ensure compliance with recommendations and treatment plans, and coordinate care that's follow-up care that's required. These responsibilities also involve monitoring the quality of care and making adjustments when quality is not satisfactory. In effect, family members become de facto geriatric care managers, though untrained and unpaid. It is a job that spans many years, on average 4.6 years, with an annual economic value of over $450 billion in the United States alone. Amidst these other activities, family members make countless decisions with and for older adults. Those choices range from the relatively minor to major. Yet all choices, regardless of magnitude, can have a profound impact on the older adult, self-perceptions of their competence, and their quality of life. The way in which decisions are made can be a reflection of long-standing family relationships and have the potential to influence that relationship for the better or the worse. Decisions can be handed down in an autocratic or paternalistic manner, or they can be mutual, the result of sincere interest in what the older adult would want. Family dynamics with origins well before old age can shape these interactions, and they deserve careful consideration as family members take on this advisory role. In situations when older adults are unable to make or express decisions for themselves due to a physical or cognitive impairment, family members are asked to make decisions as proxies. Ideally, those decisions reflect a form of substituted judgment, wherein the family member makes a choice that reflects what the older adult would have made were he or she able to. That is, the family substitutes for the older adult. In other instances, however, family may genuinely not know what the older adult would have wanted, and they are left to choose based on what is in the older adult's best interests. In both situations, family members have a serious responsibility. Some take on this responsibility with more skill and maturity than others. Some grow into the role, and in some, thankfully rare cases, the stress of this role is harmful to them and the older adult entrusted to them. There are two essential effective there are two essentials for effective collaboration between older adults and family members caring for them. The first is that family members should have adequate knowledge regarding the values and preferences of the older adult. Unfortunately, research suggests that family members are not particularly knowledgeable about older adults' preferences in a range of domains, including their wishes regarding social contact, leisure activities, living environment, and access to health care. In addition, family proxies have limited knowledge about what an older adult would want in terms of life support preferences, their willingness to participate in research, or living in a nursing home, evaluations of their current quality of life, estimates of disability, and even ratings of pain. There is, of course, variability in this knowledge. Some family members are quite knowledgeable, whereas others are no better than chance at estimating what their older family member would want. In fact, it may be unrealistic to expect family members to be knowledgeable about such a large set of preferences, which are potentially fluid and therefore difficult to predict in any case. Consequently, even more important are the essential skills involved in communicating about what older adults want and need. Care coordination is more successful when family members have good communication and decision-making skills. Unfortunately, previous research suggests that families rarely talk about topics related to parent care, and family members, particularly adult children, dominate decision-making interactions rather than collaborate with older adults. It is perhaps not surprising that families find it difficult to have frank conversations about future disability, dependence, and death. Family members across all generations are reluctant to bring up issues they may fear may be depressing, morbid, or intrusive, even though they sense some urgency to talk about these topics. Several tools are available to help families have these important conversations. For example, our research team recently developed a workbook-based intervention to prepare later life families to collaborate on care. The focus of the intervention is on teaching families communication and decision-making skills and providing a platform for highlighting areas of agreement and disagreement about care expectations. The ultimate goal of the intervention is to bring families closer to a shared understanding of parent needs and wishes. And we have recently developed an internet-based version of the intervention, and results of its evaluation are forthcoming. And this is a basic list of some of the key features that we've been instructing families regarding effective tools for family collaboration. On the horizon, new technologies may enhance the involvement of family members in the support of older adults. For example, driverless cars may allow older adults to have independence when they're no longer able to drive themselves. Monitoring equipment in the home, such as cameras, door sensors, and enhanced pill bottles, may someday enable older adults to live more independently, while family members or others observe older adults from a distance. Mechanized personal attendants may also provide some level of assistance and companionship, removing some responsibilities from family members. As the demographic pressure and caregiving demands become more intense, the private marketplace may respond to the growing need for services and supports for older adults. To talk about families in generalities is to overlook their incredible diversity. Even at the level of population trends and the status of social insurance policies, there is wide variability across different regions of the world. In addition, attention to differences based on race, ethnicity, regions within nations, cohort, and culture is important to understand how families are structured and how they function. For instance, in some countries, family obligations to support older adults is legally mandated, but those policies are variably enforced and far from universal. Ethics and norms about family obligations and responsibilities vary across time and place, and they are shifting along with the demographics. But again, generalizations can only go so far. Even within a culture, variability exists from family to family. Even within a family, variability exists from person to person. Appreciating that diversity is essential when considering how best to design supports for family members and older adults. To summarize, family members play an essential role in caring for older adults, and they will continue to do so in the decades ahead. Indeed, as governments constrain entitlement programs and other supports for older adults, family members may find that their contribution becomes even more important. Whether it is providing direct care, coordinating care, or collaborating with other providers, families are rarely prepared for the task and often learn as they go along. There is wide diversity in what they expect, what they know, and their readiness and sometimes willingness to provide this support. Resources to help families navigate these challenges are beginning to appear, but they are too few and their evaluation is only in its preliminary phases. Given the momentous demand for family supports now and in the future, there is great opportunity for governments, nonprofits, and businesses to develop services and evidence-based programs for families and older adults that maximize intergenerational collaboration and quality of life for older adults. Thank you.